Live from the Rob Christensen Radio Network Satellite Studio, it's Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies. Well, good morning, everyone, and this is Rob from Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies, the video podcast for people who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. And speaking of which, we're going to be talking and probably quite a bit about the German Netflix original Christmas Crossfire, and or in its German title, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Wir können nicht anders. But I'm sure I'll get corrected in the comments if I'm way off on that. So without much further ado, let's take a look at the trailer, shall we?
Out here in the country, we're patient. We don't talk much because nothing ever happens. But when something does happen, everybody talks, and they'll never forget it until you're 6 feet under.
5 shots of vodka, please.
Can I help you?
Hey, so do you want to take a little trip with me?
Okay, that's bad. I'll go
Just
look.
leave it.
I wouldn't do that.
Who the hell are you? Well, you stirred up a nice load of shit, didn't you?
You had a thing with the boss's wife. It's not a thing, man. I love her.
Because let's be honest, everybody in this room has fucked me. In their minds.
My boyfriend ran off and he's going to be killed.
You're Edda, aren't you?
Are you listening to me?
Don't you think this is getting a little bit out of hand?
Let me out, asshole! Don't you dare break my sauna!
Oh, hey, can I help? A weekend away. Sounds fun. And now you're dead.
Bravo!
I don't feel so good.
That's bad. What is wrong with this world? Can't you just talk to him? No, you gotta kill him instead.
Take your glasses off.
And lurches towards the light. Before the darkness takes.
So many stuck pigs. Anyway, everybody, that is the trailer to Christmas Crossfire. And now for our ideological ingredients list test. My editorializing. Does it pass the Bechdel test? No. Could it revert a reframe stamp? I don't believe so, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Is it class conscious? Maybe. Is there any class analysis to speak of? Certainly not in a Marxist sense, but I don't think that's what it was going for. And there is an analysis here. So yeah, with that out of the way, I want to talk about, I want to get my co-host in here, the man with the most, Mr. Jim Cheboyko.
Where's my vape? I can't do this without my cherry cola vape.
Of course. It's the what was it? In Pulp Fiction, it was the Kahuna Burger. This is all about the vape.
Yeah, I've never. Well, and the cinematic thing about vaping is it produces so much smoke, or whatever, steam or whatever it is. Yeah. But I've never seen so much vaping in a movie yet. I thought it was used effectively.
You're absolutely right, especially in silhouette and that. Okay, before we get to the main thing of our chat, Jim, I want to first of all, let's just remind everyone that you are in, if I can find it, you're in the spoiler zone, everybody. Jim, it looks like we've got a few people watching early on a Sunday morning, and Richard and Katie are here. Hello, Richard and Katie.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Well, it's a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And I do have some bad news for you, Jim, for those in the chat. We were expecting our good friends Mara and Janosch, unfortunately, taken ill. Nothing, no big deal that, I understand, but still not up for the show. So maybe what we can do is bring them in for like a little special cultural interview at a later date. Because this movie has that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, Jim, what did you think?
Yeah, this was an interesting one. Again, not used to the actors as you sometimes are with a foreign movie. In the opening scene, it's useful to not know the actors, because in when the two leads meet, when she comes up to him in a bar and sort of tricks him into buying her a bunch of shots. I sort of thought this would be a throwaway character. Instead, he's the main guy, and that was kind of, you don't know where it's going. So that was kind of fun. It just adds an element, a guessing element, I think, to the movie. But I thought this was pretty tight. I'm sure there was a lot going on behind the scenes. I gather it was East Germany. It was the state of Brandenburg that it was filmed in. I did a little research, and the town itself that they were sort of stuck in was obviously on the decline. I just thought it was really tight. It strangely reminded me a little bit of After Hours, which is a very old Scorsese, well, not very old, but a 1980s Scorsese movie where a sort of a straight man makes a couple of decisions, gets thrust into a situation, and goes from there. But never skip out on a conference. That's or do, I don't know, whatever works for you.
Another interesting note, Jim. So. Is it Detlev or Detlenbeck or just a second.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
The director, Detlev
Buck. Yeah.
He played Siggy in the film. Mm-hmm. And from what I understand, that's reprising his role. He actually made, this is kind of a weird in-universe sequel to a film he made in the early 90s. And I believe he's reprising that role just as the cranky old man with the Kalashnikov, obsessively protecting a sauna, was reprising that role. And these are ancestors, or well, not ancestors, the children, like some of the drama is being played out by the children of these two older characters. So
Okay.
I thought that was really kind of a very cool sort of, yeah, like it makes
Tie-in.
it makes me want to see the well, you can't call it a prequel or even the first,
Yeah.
take almost 30 years and go, it's a sequel. Like it,
Yeah.
but I want to see that movie now.
The
I want to
germ of
see,
the
yeah. Well, because I think some of the way this played out is you can kind of see there's like this one's got very much 2020 themes, but I suspect that early 90s film had very much because like by then the wall had fallen, like East Germany was going through, or what was East Germany was going through this economic turmoil, and I think that's what some of that was kind of examining. And so we see some of that playing out in Siggy, and I don't have that character's name, but Herman's father.
Yes.
And I think some of that was playing out there. That whole bit that's constantly, loser pays all. And you can kind of see on a macro political level and how it's devolved into this dusty, dying little town.
Yeah. No, it was there was something there, I think, about the geography that may be obvious to German folks, but not necessarily to us. I mean, you can get senses of it, but
yeah. So what? Just throwing up Richard's Morning, everyone, on the big screen. What would you say? Well, okay. Did you enjoy it?
Oh yeah. No, it was quite good. I started it fairly late, and actually, I try to watch the movies fairly close to when we get together. But this one I watched on Friday evening, and I ended up staying up till 3:30 in the morning watching it. And I thought, I'll maybe watch an hour just so I'm not so rushed tomorrow. But and that sometimes happens just because of your schedule, etc. But I ended up watching the whole thing through, and it was sort of had me guessing. And I found the characters kind of interesting. The sort of the elements of dark and light. You had the rapist cop was kind of one of the darker elements.
Who we've seen, because he was the husband in Freaks, You're One of Us.
Oh, that's right. That's okay. Yeah. Good one. Yeah. That's nice connection. Yeah, it's funny when you watch. I've been watching some Iranian movies this past year, mostly off Canopy and services such as that. And yeah, you sort of start to notice, I caught this guy in something else. So, but yeah, no, it was. I mean, it had me guessing. One of the great signs of a movie that's working is you don't know how it's going to end, and this was
absolutely
similar to that. So
yeah, no, I agree completely, Jim. What we got a couple of comments.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead, fire away.
I was just going to say, how did you enjoy it?
I really enjoyed it. I'm kind of surprised. I was a little, why do I care about any of these people? Why do I care about our two protagonists, Edda and Sam? And I was like, well, okay, I'm a little bored. Then it gets a little interesting, though. I thought it was kind of almost Jim, like they're in the country and here's a douchebag in a big truck.
Yeah.
But okay, I'm running with it. Then all of a sudden it got interesting, and then I really got into it. And yeah, like I said, I'm excited to see the first, to see
Yeah.
how this filmmaker, developed. Now, Richard has a couple of comments regarding the class consciousness and class analysis. I think are important just to note. So Richard in the chat, in the YouTube chat, it says some hints of class consciousness. One, cop points to how no local folks benefit from the pipeline that runs through the area. And I think it's a great little quote, billions of dollars, we don't get 1 cent. And then the second, immigrants very wary of getting involved at all because they know they will be blamed. And I think they're black. Like, it's important for those of you who haven't seen the film, they are racialized immigrants, most likely refugees, and they have been, they're under in the movie, they're under a curfew, not out after dark, and so they're like, our two protagonists are looking for help from them, and they're like, well, we'll give you this hatchet, but that's going too far, which I found. And even earlier, which I think goes into more of the bigger themes, but thank you, Richard, for pointing that out. But even earlier, one of Herman's henchmen, it's kind of intimated that it's like maybe he has a relationship with the voodoo priestess, i.e. the doctor who just, again, like so many other migrants, especially refugees who come from a medical system that isn't Western. It's very hard for them to be, given any kind of qualifications. But there's a couple of moments there where it's like, oh, wait a second, you don't want your buddies to know that maybe you have a relationship with this woman. So again, that kind of, some of those tensions being played out.
And yet I like how the immigrants were shown to be sort of, they had some metal to them. They were like the voodoo priestess was like, you came to me for help, she sort of slaps back at them. And even the two guys with the tree and the woman that gave the axe over about 2/3 of the way through, even they were survivors. They weren't cowering, and they weren't sort of victims. And one of the sort of subtly comedic moments is when they stumble upon was it Edda and the cop who she had
attempted to rape.
Attempted
to rape her.
And the one that she had killed, and they're doing something innocent like getting a tree for Christmas, which is interesting because they're Christian. They're probably then Christian immigrants, if I can assume that much.
Ethiopia or
and so they're just standing there with the tree, and they're sort of, it looks like they could have come out of a Christmas card, and yet they've stumbled across this killing. And they go, oh crap, what does this mean for us now? And it was kind of a subtly comedic moment.
And back to that analysis that Richard's was talking about, like, what were they what did they say? It's like, no, you have to stay. They'll think we did it. We will not be believed. And I thought that was just a great, this great moment. And then she's like, all right, well then get in the car. We're all going. We'll all leave.
A couple things about that whole setup, and it for the people that haven't watched it, it's not a huge part of the movie, but they sort of are doing two bad things. Then if they aren't allowed out after dark, they're out after dark, and then somebody gives them heck for taking a tree off not crown land, but somebody's like a landholder's land or something like that.
Sorry about that, getting a little too loud in the music.
Oh yeah, no.
There we go.
But yeah, so he was sort of almost a Robin Hood thing. Like, did you take this deer from the king's property?
And he's the mayor. The mayor of a dying town, but the mayor. That's illegal. It's like, but this is what's fascinating, and this is what I think that's part of the deeper analysis of this film. all these women. I'm not gonna. This is not me knocking my own created ideological ingredients, but it does show the weakness of applying any kind of test and just doing the test. Oh well, it didn't pass this. It can't be good. Every woman in this show is we can slap back, are active characters, solid characters, agency, all that stuff. Like, and they're all like, they're all like everyone's an equal, and I'm in a character sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I thought that was really. Like at every stage, none of these women are pushovers. Not one. None are pushovers, and they're all very active in their. They're all in every scene. They're active players. You know?
Yeah. No, and that's maybe that's what you get from watching. From. I'm generalizing wildly here, but European movies. Is that you might get a bit of a different take than, say, in America. I watched something recently, and I just thought, oh, that it feels so retrograde. It felt like because certain characters weren't given enough to do, and it was all about the white dudes. So, yeah.
Well, do you think? Like, I do. I think in some ways the movie, the theme of the film, was about masculinity. Like, I mean, it's stated early, oh, you're mad. Like, I mean, the professor, the bookworm wearing glasses, is the one who states, oh, you're trapped by your masculinity. As Rudy, like a ding dong, just cannot, and they don't even portray him as, which is I was really impressed with. I mean, yes, he's slept with this local. Yeah, I can't call him a crime lord. They're all so comically. They're thugs. They're bad, but they're not. There's a comicness even. Even they weren't going to kill him.
Yeah.
They're all saying, like, I mean, we know Herman is all, until the end when he's totally lost it because everything's falling apart. But at the beginning, he just uses the gun to threaten people. He wasn't going to murder Rudy. They were going to beat him up because he slept with the boss's wife.
Yeah.
The local, like, he's just some sleazy property developer. Like, he's just, like, just this kind of corrupt, low grade,
He's a bad guy, but he's a local bad guy. He's not some worldly global James Bond type.
Well, and he's not like a just some criminal tough. They're all like, he's got the fire department, the local cop shop. He's bought some land, trying to bully the mayor, but the mayor's like, yeah, you're not. He can't even bully the mayor. The mayor's like, yeah, accept it. Yeah. It's bad for everyone. The mayor isn't even caving. It's, again, why I want to see the first movie. But I do think, though, all these characters, and what's interesting is they keep coming back to the idea of a pig and a stuck pig, wild boars bleeding out. All these bad guys who can't seem to, they all bleed out.
Yeah.
They get shot or they get stabbed and they bleed.
Yeah.
Either they bleed to death or they get to help, but they're all, and it's all this masculine posturing. Like the first kid, the Stefan kid, he gets stabbed, but they're all like, why'd you have to use the knife?
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't give him a gun. And, this whininess and the posturing and right through to the end, Sam, who's the bookworm, glasses wearing, educated guy, even at the end, he pulls his punch. He doesn't axe St. Nick, Herman, and thank goodness, because it's actually poor dopey Norbert, and it's like, relax, he's still breathing. And it's like, so it really does give a very clear contrast of what a guy is supposed to be. And even though you could kind of say the that whole the loser pays all, and he's kind of always set up as a loser in many movies we've watched, Jim, where this guy would have been the loser. His masculinity is forever questioned until he's does something weaselly or whatever. Not in this film. You know, and Herman kills himself because Herman is the loser. Herman does pay all. He pays Edison's, who she did kill a cop in self-defense, I would argue, but as we've seen, but it involves a cop, even a dead one. I wouldn't be gambling on her.
Well, then they wrap it up nicely, and they just say, "Oh, he was responsible for everything."
Well, but loser pays all.
Yeah.
Right, like it's cooked into the film.
That's interesting. There was even a dedicated shot to showing that he had the axe, and he twisted it around for the dull side.
Pulls his punch.
But are you saying that that's shown as being a negative thing? Or
no, I think that's the whole. That's like it goes to the theme of the film. Is like he never chooses to kill.
Yes.
Always at a crisis moment, and then he's like, you know what? I'm walking away from this, or I'm not doing that, or I'm going to stand up to these guys. Like, you know what? But he never goes for the kill. I think that's exactly they made that cutaway, but to show that he's not going to axe. And at the time, he thought it was Herman, and in a classic Hollywood thing would have been, well, Herman had to die. And so, this would have been justified murder. And even then he doesn't. And it makes all the difference. It's all of a sudden he's as clean as anyone is in this film, right? Like he's clean. The only one who did, actually pull the trigger over a struggle as she was being sexually assaulted,
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say there was a couple of those struggles where it wasn't a clear cut, like one person on the other, but it was just like people being bad at handling weapons.
And a lot more realistic, like we're always given these in so many of these films, like, and I like Pulp Fiction, but I think in some ways this is a weird kind of German riff on Pulp Fiction. Except that nothing is fetishized, nothing is glamorized. They're all kind of comical and pathetic to a degree, but not. They're never cruel when they're looking at these folks. They're not cruelly. They're not going, look at this pathetic bastard. It's all the pathos is from legitimate character choices.
No, that's a good point.
You might not be watching. I really enjoy this film.
To some extent, you're talking about other movies, and I was there's imagery, and I think only imagery in the most sort of shallow sense, kind of a Straw Dogs kind of thing, where a young intellectual, glasses wearing, sweater wearing, a young man with a conservative haircut. He is in the countryside, with a bunch of
man, like not a man's man.
Yeah, with a bunch of sort of thuggy heavies, and Straw Dogs is pretty brutal. I think it was a Peckinpah movie, unless I'm. But
I believe you're right.
Yeah, and that it's been years since I've seen that, so I don't want to drag that in. Thematically, just the imagery. Glasses wearing intellectual in the country, and he's smaller. He seems to be a smaller guy. The actor himself, I think, is part. So this is another thing that I was sort of going to ask our Yana and Mara and Janosch about. Was because he's kind of olive skinned. The actor himself is half East Indian, half German. I think I was reading, and I was wondering if that played into any part of it, but it didn't seem to be a racial, but it just was another thing to make him stick out, I think.
I think it was like, I mean, they didn't make it overt, but I think it reflects it would have been if it wasn't a casting choice, great. He delivered.
Oh yeah,
his performance was solid, but I think if it was a casting choice, partly just his that he is he's racialized, as they say. I think that was a great choice. It kind of reflects a part of the changing nature of Germany, because I kind of and initially, Jim, I assumed like his name. Let me pull up their. So it's starring Kostja Ullmann, and that's Kostja Ullmann, and that's actually who we're talking about here, the Sam character. Although I thought he'd be the Sascha Gersak, because I'm like, oh, he's got kind of a Turkish look to him. So which would, my poor assumption, like as you say, Jim. But it also kind of shows that, the nature of Germany's changing as the nature of the West. Like, in some ways, these are all these poor sad sacks, like Herman and Rudy, and you could put them in MAGA wear and just sort of say, because that groaning about how it used to be, and that's I don't want to go too far in that comparison, because it's just the economic shocks that were felt in the East after the fall of the Berlin Wall are not what is what happened. What's going on in the United States. So don't want to go too far with that. But the masculinity we see on display coming out of some parts of the States, I thought matched what was being critiqued in this film.
Also, that sort of poisonous. I always used to think of nostalgia as being just another kind of way to say bittersweet, with an eye to the past. But I can see, especially from the last 4 years, how nostalgia can be poisonous, and it can prevent you from. It can hold you back, and there's a deep sense of nostalgia with this one. You said, "Oh, this when the guy with the Kalashnikov was the Herman's father was guarding the factory for no other reason. Like, he actually puts a gun on a guy for trying to use the phone, and it's just
the
so that
broken phone,
general sense of ownership, I guess, and protecting that status. But I mean, and he goes, oh. What you're saying about masculinity, part of that is also that comradeship, that mateship, I think. And he's saying, oh, after work we would all come to the sauna, and we just saw him in a robe.
I mean, the Katya character actually pokes the wolf guy directly about that homoerotic kind of thing of, we'll be men naked together, although maybe that's more the North American in me, because Germans of both genders, that naked in a spa is a thing, no one cares about. That's more my hang up than it is,
But I mean, that just his sense of he ties the economic base in with being a man, with having all these men's sort of like having a group of friends and going to the sauna, and
traditions.
It's all sort of wrapped up together, and that
good
was sort of
jobs. Part of that identity of a good factory job, and they had a holiday camp, and everything was stable.
He's a tiny bit, probably in a script, it's a paragraph, but it's a little bit of a monologue. He just says, at one time this place supported 200 to 300 people. There were parties, there was this, there was that. We had the holiday camp, that kind of thing too. So,
well, that nostalgia in some parts of, even central to Eastern Europe of, perhaps at times poisonous nostalgia. Now, that said, I don't want to, and this is, I think, where that's why I kind of sucked in my teeth a bit about the class consciousness and class analysis. Because at the same time, I don't see the working class has no practical power except in collective action. There's my Marxist. There's a bit of Marxism, but I'm going to drop some more, Jim.
Merry Christmas.
There's nothing wrong with the working class going, there was a time when we had economic security. Mm-hmm. We could, that's not a bad thing either. I think where it becomes is, and this is where, I think this is why if you are, and again, I am a middle-aged white man, I benefit from patriarchy. And I've certainly done, again, that bar is so low, I've tripped over it at times.
Yeah.
But you on a practical level, you know what, if you want to be left, you should be a feminist. You should support that, because it works out better for you. Like, I mean, the Sam character, is, that's the, he doesn't have any of that shit these poor young men have to worry about. Rudy bleeds out.
Yeah.
With a romantic, very Hollywood romantic idea of, I would die for you. And there's Katya, just listen, I appreciate you doing that. I really, a woman who, again, because of the douchebag she's around and has been exploited by, she acknowledges that, but even she's like, fuck, just go. I can manage these morons, just get out.
Yeah,
and he can't do it. They're all trapped, like Sam says. They're all trapped in their masculinity. They're that type of masculinity, that type of nostalgia for a past that didn't really exist, and a past that they bind up with their gender, not with their class.
Yeah.
Which is why I kind of suck in my teeth a little on the analysis. Like, it's got I think a great gender analysis. But, it could have a class component to it that I think would have, but yeah, still, fuck, what a great movie. And I don't disagree with the analysis either. It's a great counter to every film you and I have grown up on, where the John McClanes are, that's what being a man is. And that's the way to deal with women. Whereas this guy, Edda, is, if she gets once saved, it's only because she ran some guy over.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They both kind of toss the baton of saving each other.
Yeah.
She is never a damsel in distress.
Yeah, no.
Katya, never a damsel in distress. Even at the end, she's just like at no time, she don't touch me.
Well, at the same time, he doesn't treat her like a damsel in distress. When the shit goes down and he sort of stumbles on this scene in the forest, which starts everything off, he runs away with the victim, purported victim, Rudy, and they say, let's go. And he doesn't say, I have to stop here for, we have to wait for her. They just take off and they'll figure it out later. And she handles herself fine. She gets away from it. She stumbles into town.
She's a big girl.
Yeah. But one of the other kind of, subtly funny things is when he tries to stop them, he basically, he stumbles on the scene of a bunch of guys surrounding another beaten guy, and the one guy's got a gun and he's going to either scare him or shoot him or whatever.
Yeah, and to Sam, it looks like he's going to murder the guy.
Yeah.
It's.
And he goes and he says, hey, don't do that. He doesn't have a weapon. He doesn't say, I'm going to call the cops. He doesn't say, I'm phoning this into the police. He just says, no, that's bad. And they chase him.
And back to another thing, that whole idea of you're not going to get away with this. Yeah. Whereas those guys are forever trapped in that, you know, in there has to be consequences because they're all challenges to their masculinity. Everything's a challenge to their manhood, right? Whereas he's like, this is gonna blow up in your face. Siggy, you know, just let it go. I'm worried that you're gonna get caught trying to hide that you went bankrupt. You know, you're gonna go to prison. You know that's, and it's like, nope, there has to be consequences. I have to follow through. You know, yeah. Richard chimes in the chat. Masculinity piece really emphasized as Rudy and Sam walk into town, and Rudy talks about how he's going to march in to save Katya. Absolutely, like any movie hero. You know, yeah, you're absolutely right, Richard. That's bang on. Yeah. Damn, what a good movie. And again, what a great antidote to some of the stuff we have seen, you know, which are good movies, you know, but some of it really does have that like deep in, you know, and most recently Die Hard.
Well, and you know, when I was young and you'd read, you know, mostly, and this next is going to be about books, but you'd mostly read American books and they'd end a certain way. And, you know, they you know, touched a lot of the same points. And I remember I was reading 1984 and, you know, amongst other things, their portrayal of the Winston Smith's love interest. I just thought, whoa, this is not American at all. You know, and it was so different. It was English, and it was just a different portrayal of a woman. And the rumor was that she was promiscuous, and so Winston Smith thought to himself, I want her to be as promiscuous as possible. I'm like, well, this is not coming from the lower 48. You know,
no, it is
what do
not.
I do with this? This is confusing.
I'm kind of curious, and it'd be interesting hearing, you know, the folks in the chat, you know, folks watching us, how they felt on this. But one of the things I wrote down before I watched the movie, you know, my expectations exercised. I was like, you know what, it is European. You know, they've hinted at it in the trailer. You know, there'll be sex, and it'll be fun sex. Like, it'll be sex as fun.
Yeah.
You know, it won't be, you know, yes, of course, they're attractive young people. You know, it's a movie. I'm not, you know, like you can only go, but at the same time, it's not going to be preternatural. You know, yeah, we do see them naked, but it didn't seem to be like male gazy, like creeping on her. And like we certainly, Katya is definitely more feminized, a more like, not a femme fatale, but she's a very capital W, or like a model woman, you know, but never, like she's not, the clothing isn't tight. Like it's, you know, boy, the woman could rock a full fur collar, you know, like, you know, certainly there's cleavage, but it's not, it's just so, you know, Central East European style, but not that kind of super tight, very, you know, that gaze, that creepy kind of thing on her.
The Megan Fox Transformers thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, they are both naked for chunks of the you know, right when they, I think after that first morning maybe. But what I was going to say about her, I can see the picture. But they also
seem to, they were having sex because it's fun.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like that, just the joie de vivre, you know, it's like,
yeah.
Hey, you know, get high and, you know.
What bad things could happen? You know, like,
and no bad things happen.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean,
there is no consequence. But
not as a direct result.
Exactly. There's no there's no negative consequences to their sex.
They weren't,
you know, at all. You know,
she's on the green screen behind you.
Yes, she is.
The Etta character, and I thought you were just talking about Katie Sackhoff the other day, and
played
she's got
by
this
Alli Neumann.
she's got this,
Alli Neumann.
and it was her second credit apparently, and she's got this crazy Katie Sackhoff energy. I thought that a little bit of a resemblance, but that kind of slightly demented place that Katie Sackhoff goes to sometimes.
Do you remember? It was one of I think one of Melanie Griffith's first roles, playing kind of a crazy woman.
Something Wild?
Yes, Something Wild. Like, you can't call her manic pixie dream girl because there's a danger to her.
Yeah.
Like, it would very oh geez. So it was Jeff Daniels? Yes. Jeff Daniels.
Ray Liotta.
Yeah, and then Ray Liotta, which still, like, he just creeps me out. That's the other thing, like, what's refreshing about this film. In an American film, those folks are just frightening.
Yeah.
Like, to your, like, I mean, they're just so malevolent, which kind of says, I think, a lot about North American politics and that fear of criminals.
Yeah.
While at the same time, a weird kind of worshiping them as Ubermen. Whereas here, it's, no, they're just forever kind of made fun of. A gentle, but still sort of, really, this idiot? You know?
Yeah.
They're too busy getting stabbed, you know, or, well, like stuck pigs. That constant theme of, you know, wild boars, but really stuck pigs.
I was just thinking sort of, I think a little bit before this morning and just even now, is that I don't think you'd see this movie made by Americans and coming out the same. I mean, that's that sort of danger that the Avalanche, the Swedish Avalanche movie that they did and they remade with Will Ferrell last year, you know, famously sort of clattered to the ground. But in this case, I wonder if this could even be an English movie, like a England English movie. I'm not so sure. Like I sort of wonder if this is a distinct product of Germany.
Yeah, maybe, eh? Like, it is. It's too bad, and we'll do it. Maybe live to tape, but we'll do an interview with Janosch and Mara because their message was like Mara was really looking forward to the conversation. And assuming I'm reading that right, it could very well be because it is so much about gender. You know, like it's really kind of not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
You know, so we'll have to do that. Here's Richard commenting. Richard, the sex scene in which Sam leads Edda to save whoever's calling for help establishes him as the protagonist and moral anchor. Absolutely. Yeah, he is. Yeah. It is about him and I would say him and Edda. As far as because she's also like, I mean, it starts on her, it ends on her and her reconciliation with her father.
Yeah. I just, Richard corrected, leads to leaves. The sex scene in which Sam, I was trying to figure that out.
Oh, okay, yeah, I maybe I've just could literally. Leads Edda to save. Yes.
Leads Edda to save.
I might have stumbled on it psychologically, but I was like, well, that isn't the way it played out.
Yeah.
I'll just keep reading. It'll make sense eventually.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that correction. Thank you very much for that correction, Jim and Richard. Anyone who might, hopefully will get this out as a podcast eventually, and they'll hear us ramble on about this for a good 5 minutes. Okay. Was there any off note or tone switches, changes that you found like as we've run into this in the last few films where it's like, oh, that just doesn't fit the tone of this movie.
Yeah.
Or it really seems to be a big tone shift. That's why. Did you see that in this one at all?
the rape or the attempted rape. I mean, it's sexual assault of Etta by the policeman. That was, that was sort of he was shown to be a stumble bum, kind of a whiny guy. He had obviously a bunch of issues, and then it just got, as they got further
and
into
almost
the woods,
like an incel rant of you give me what everyone else is having,
Why do you all leave? Are you you leave us here? Do you know how the men outnumber the women 4-1 or something? I thought basically a German version of Alaska, but he had this big round of people leaving, and why did you? Well, I wonder, but and then it obviously got sinister. More sinister, and I was sort of wondering, can you bounce back? Can you come back from that and keep that same tone? Because that's a pretty serious thing. But obviously, but and I think they maintained it. They didn't really revisit it. They showed later on. They showed the dead cop's body, and I think the van was still on with the lights on and the music. And there was a couple of wolves. The wolves were coming up to feast on his body or destroy evidence or what have you.
Well, that's what I was thinking of. Here's I think I was concerned until I thought it was really interesting. About 7.5, well, I think it was 7 minutes, 47 seconds in, actually. About 7 minutes, 47 seconds in. The light and the wolf, like his name's Wolf. Wolf comes up, knocks on the window, and then is a real kind of dick. And it was like, there's a part of me going, big douchebag and a big truck. It probably, because it's not just a big truck, but it's a big American truck, which you can see in Germany, unlike, say, in France. Like, you don't run into those a lot, but in Germany you do. I saw them in Berlin. Not as many as you see here, but you can see them. I suspect, though, in Germany that gives an extra level of douchiness. It's a big American truck.
That's a good point.
But that, I thought, was the perfect hint of, okay, this is not going to be a fun comic romp. Look, he is a fish out of water, whereas Etta is like, no, I know this area.
Yeah.
They take care of their own shit. We don't need to get involved. But up to that point, it's like it could have been just a romantic romp. Who knows what the shotgun is for in the movie poster? There is that perfect tone shift. But at the same time, they go into it, but these guys are just so goofy. Well, not goofy, not fun goofy, not Guy Ritchie goofy.
Yeah.
They're like, they're still dangerous, but they're not evil. They're just kind of, they're
stumble bummy.
Yeah, a bit of that. Listen, we got look at this. Who's in the chat now? Our man Shashank.
He may be gone already. He was mentioning he just wanted to pop in and say hi, I think.
Yeah. Shashank comments a lot. Big friend, early friend of the show, Shashank Vachari comments, I'm finishing an end-term assignment, would be unable to watch the podcast today. We'll catch it later. Take care. You bet, Shashank. Always great seeing you pop in. And I know once you've had a chance to read it, you always have an interesting comment left for us later. As speaking of which, to those of you who haven't already, I believe it is time to shamelessly beg for your like. Oh, wait just a second here. So give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And then, of course, don't forget to ring that bell. Oh!
It's seasonal.
It's not the same. It's not quite the same clang, but I kind of like the seasonal bells. That's awesome, Jim. Thank you.
I found these before the tree literally fell over last night, and the trunk's very narrow. We it's a whole different, it's a whole story. But anyway,
Awesome.
trunk's very narrow, doesn't stay in the thing properly, so it's now got guy wires holding it up.
Oh, well, there we go. And who else do we have here? Ahmed, my friend, Jelly Duck. There's a wave for you, brother. Thank you very much for dropping by, and welcome, sir.
Yes.
And then we have one more chat from our friends, a follower, a friend from on Twitch, because we're also broadcasting live on Twitch.
This person again.
GU123 Tom FK74. I don't believe he's the same person, but the same bot BS. Apparently, it could help us become famous.
My followers, primes on viewers and viewers on. Okay.
Yeah.
Bigfollows.com.
Yeah, exactly. With a whole bunch of weird things just to make sure that you're an extra idiot if you reply to that. Jelly Duck. Oh, no, not the Twitch.
The Twitch.
LOL. The Twitch.
That's right.
All right. What did you think of... Like, what did you think of the performances? Was there any one that particularly stood out to you, or?
Aside from the two leads, it was kind of, and like a movie like After Hours. I mean, there's a similarity there. I'm not saying it was a literal facsimile of that movie, but you got a lot of people sort of coming in and going, almost ensemble-y, not quite, maybe, but no, I don't know if anybody stood out. I thought the choice of the leads was good. The bad guys, the antagonists, they were kind of interesting. I don't think one person stood above anybody else. It was just, I thought it was fairly well cast. The one that played Katya was sort of, she ended up, instead of just being a wife or like a girlfriend or wife or whatever, she actually had some heft to her performance.
Yeah.
So I'm not familiar with that actress at all. But that was, it was very solid across. I think it was well cast.
Yeah,
basically, yeah, and the lead, again, the actor's name Kostja Ullmann. I thought he did a great job, and I thought that Alli Neumann, who was the second, or not the second, I should say, the second part of the couple, co-star, exactly.
She equally drives the narrative.
Yeah. I didn't want to imply that she's behind him at all, but I thought she did for her second credit. She's got something else in post-production right now, but I thought she did she held the screen. I mean, I'd watch these.
Yes, she did. Yeah.
I'd watch these two again in a second. Yeah. How about you? Did anything stick out for you at all, or?
I feel similarly to you, Jim. They were all great. Like, it really was. Each character I bought, like, they all kind of had their own vibe. They all brought their own, like, even the dynamics between, she's the, she's the boss's wife, the Katya character.
Yeah.
But her interaction with her husband's boys, and the way she could, there's a great moment between her and Norby, big guy, could be quite imposing, and the way, like, it's even shot, like, it's a great little moment early in the film, folks. Camera is actually from his perspective. So he's a big guy, so the camera's up and looking down on her. It's an over-the-shoulder shot. But she is So typically you use these things, especially emphasizing that height disparity, to show who's the weaker of the two. Although I suspect, again, in that, well, you know what? I don't know what was in Detlev's head or his cinematographer's head, but I think in this case it wasn't like not just her performance, but it's almost to show that even looking up, she is the one who controls that scene.
Yeah.
And not because Norbert, the guy who played Norbert, is a weak actor. He is delivering what he's supposed to deliver.
Yeah.
And so she's the one in charge. Well, at the same time, he has a point he's not going past.
Yeah.
Yes, he is frightened of her. But he's not at the same time, like, you know, he's not going to be corrupted by her, co-opted by her. You know, like, but it's a great little moment. And that's what I'm impressed with. Like, we've seen this is something, Jim, we have even in the films that that you or I have criticized. We've had some really nice, well fleshed out. We've had a good run of well fleshed out secondary characters, supporting cast, and where the actors are allowed to bring themselves to the table, bring something to the table, which really makes for these little moments that they go to the theme of the story. They're not chewing scenery. It's subtle and where they're bringing all the elements of filmmaking to help tell the story. She was great. All the henchmen they all had their little moments.
Yeah, they had stuff to do.
The doctor, who helps the Stefan kid out, she was solid. Like you said, it's like 500 milliliters. Oh, that's too much. It's like she's just, the way she's just no nonsense, take charge person. She's a doctor. From 3 generations of doctors. And
arguably, in lesser hands, these would be throwaway characters, where you have to have the wife there, so let's give her a few lines, and the actors and the writer and the team, they take something and they just make it a little bit more. They give it a little bit more depth, I think, and
they work with their talent and kind of say, well, what are you bringing? What are you bringing here? We've got it on paper. How do you get off book? It's directed by Detlev Buck, written by Martin Behnke and Detlev Buck, and I believe, I don't know this. I'm not 100% sure. But if memory serves, these two also collaborated on the first film written in 92 or 93 or whatever. Detlev's been making movies for a while.
I think
Deutschland
decades. Deutschland 1983 or Deutschland 83 was a series that I'm sort of interested in following up. I think that's on Crave, but has something similar to do with East German stuff. Assuming that this is supposed to take, I don't think they ever name the town. They might, and I might have missed it, but
they don't. Now, one of my other German friends, she chimed in Freiburg, and this may have actually been shot in, or some of it, because Freiburg.
Okay.
Freiburg. Her husband is from Freiburg, which is like a town actually just north of Darmstadt, like in Frankfurt in Hesse, Hessen, Germany, which is the western end of the country. So they may have actually shot this, but I'm not sure about that reference. Another reason why it's too bad Mara and Janosch couldn't, but we will catch up with them, folks, and we'll bring an interview with them to the table, because there are some cultural aspects here that I think we need to dig into. But I also want to know about the Freiburg reference
and the IMDb page, and for what it says, it says a lot of it was shot in the state of Brandenburg, which is the one that sort of encircles Berlin, and so there's a couple of lines
it's certainly set there because they were in Berlin, and then let's drive to the country for the weekend.
Yeah.
You know,
And Berlin, there's a few references to like, where are you from, Berlin, or that kind of thing. You're a fancy guy with your 5 books. It's like a bookmobile, like it's just or whatever. But it's implied that he's sort of a fancy hipster,
a hippie,
kind of
a hippie in his tooling around in his ride, and
his little camper van, and
and getting picked up by women. Another thing, like, I mean, it's like we can't seem to get out of these German films where, we've got these women characters who go to bars to pick up a guy. Like, it's like, oh, well, this sucks. I need hey, you. loser pays all.
Yeah. I do want to point out that no children were threatened during this movie. So that's
not a one.
That's a good. We picked that on purpose, Katie. So that's.
Although I did think of Katie when it's like, oh my God, we can't get out of this. Next month will be different, folks. We've certainly established a certain tone as part of our riff on Christmas. But you know what? The new year will bring, as the show develops, the new year will bring a different kind of vibe. We're almost, I don't know, Jim and I are almost exploring a month to month kind of, hey, this is sort of what we're going to explore here. So maybe you'll see more of something different later.
There were a couple of there's a couple of questions I had while I was watching this, but
there we go.
There we go. That's just what I was laughing at.
Katie Fowler chimes in the chat. Passes the baby test.
But I thought it was a really nicely shot and really nicely lit movie. It takes place mostly at night, and there's a lot of that garish kind of purpley, green, red, and even there was one. This isn't about lighting so much, but there's this great shot where they go for service, Christmas Eve service or Christmas service, and it's shot sort of from
midnight
the pulpit.
mass.
Yeah, midnight mass from the pulpit's perspective, and you see everybody in the audience, and it's Norbert has his, like, there's all these people with wounds in the congregation, like with fresh bandages, and if you notice that
even Katja got shot in the ass with buckshot.
Yes. Oh yeah, that's right too.
Yeah.
And then if you didn't notice, the woman that gave Sam the axe, she sits beside them
next to him. Yep.
Yeah, because the two of them were in the front row on the special pew, I guess, set aside for the mayor.
Well, and there was a German, let's say a white German family, got pushed over with, I want to say it might have even been you know what? I'm not going to say it because it was one of the, the local immigrants, the local refugees, and I'm kind of assuming the refugees.
Yeah,
I don't know that. But I'm probably right.
So that gate was for curfew, like that iron fence or whatever?
I don't know.
Or was it for their own protection, or was it to keep them in? Because they seem to have... I was sort of not clear on that.
Well, she was asking to get let in, so there was a kind of an assumption that they're like, no, we do have control over this, a bit of control over our domain, but I don't know. Like, I think this is where we really need maybe Astrid and Jens, or actually, you know what? I'm going to say this right now. Any Germans who might stumble upon this, or our German friends of the show, if they can chime in the comments. And like I said, but you know what? We'll put a pin in that. Actually, and I'll put it out to folks, either they're watching this later or they're watching it now. What are some of the questions you want us to ask of our German friends on these cultural aspects? We'll definitely put that one on the list Jim just brought up, but if there's anything else, feel free to chime in now and we'll make sure we ask that question. When we connect with our peeps in Darmstadt, did you, Jim, like, what were you, when you were watching this, what were you expecting? What was your, what were you expecting?
I I just sort of really glanced at the sort of the log line, like the whole just the summary, and I didn't really absorb it much. I was expecting more of a kind of a freewheeling, almost like a Die Hardy kind of, on a smaller scale, but like more of a shooty, chasey, and it was. But I thought it would be a little more chaotic. Crossfire to me, suggests two active parties shooting at each other. So I don't love the title. That's one thing I wanted to bring up, because in German it's translated to "We cannot do otherwise."
Okay, all right, that's the translation. We cannot do others, which certainly way goes to the theme of the film.
Yeah.
You know, like even Sam feels compelled. Etta feels compelled. There's a competing morality here.
Yeah, and presumably that phrase works for every character in its own way. And so you go from something that's very specific, Christmas Crossfire, to something that's a little more existential or philosophical, which is so German. Let's call it "We Cannot Do Otherwise." I don't know if Netflix would go for that, but I don't know. Let's call it Christmas Kung Fu Fight or something like that, and go from there. But
yes.
But and that actually sort of, I wanted to ask you. The whole Christmas, of course, it's a movie not about Christmas. It just happens to take place at Christmas. And I think there's issues of homecoming. We find out that Etta is from that place, but fairly into it. We don't find that out immediately, and she doesn't crib to it automatically. Just, oh, this is my town. My dad lives here.
It's a little rushed at the beginning, like to a point where it's like, it's almost like they cut a scene for pace, or they cut a scene back for pacing, because it's, hey, do you want to go out to the country? And then it's only when the adventure properly starts that Sam is referring to a conversation we never saw.
Yes, yeah.
And maybe that's why anyway, continue.
So I was just wondering about is the Christmas connection entirely necessary? Now, there's some musical choices that they bring up that are, and I just, I talked about the midnight mass service shot that I liked, and there's several other things. A couple, he's walking through town dressed with a Saint Nick rather than Santa Claus, sort of a Saint Nick cloak, and threatening everyone, which is another element of sinister. But I was just sort of wondering about that connection. Obviously, rather than being a movie about Christmas, it's just one that happens to take place in the month of December, right?
My initial gut on that one is I think it'd be a lesser movie at a different time of the year.
Okay.
It does bring a little extra. I do think there's something brought to the table setting at Christmas. In part, there's at the very beginning, the bad guy, Herman, the sad bad guy, the tragic, like he is kind of a tragic character, trapped in his masculinity, or in his idea of masculinity, and in his idea of being the boss and being in charge and the way you stay on top. But it also goes to his image, but he's talking about things coming to light. So there's things that happen in darkness. Christmas, especially in a lot of Central, and they all have a Christmas market, which they set up at the very beginning of the film, and it's a lot of light. And then when he does bump himself off, like when they have, he's, they do it he does it at the Christmas market
in the sleigh.
In the sleigh. But even that, I think he as a character sees himself like a lot of these, the Cubby Barretts of the world. And for those of you who don't follow Manitoba politics of 30 years ago, Cubby Barrett was a Well, I think he may still be alive. I'm not sure. Let's just say any local big shot of a small town, of a small rural area. A lot of them, they see themselves as, I provide for everyone. Jim, you've referred to the scene where the sheik in the tent talking about he is a river to his people in
Lawrence of Arabia.
Thank you, Lawrence of Arabia, played by Anthony Quinn.
Yes,
Anthony Quinn.
Yeah.
I am a river to my people.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
you're a corrupt thief.
Yeah.
I think Herman looks at himself that way. And what was St. Nicholas? But, somebody gave gifts to everyone. And I think he saw himself that way. And
Yeah.
so when he's going through the town, you're kind of seeing him as he actually is.
Yeah.
He's part of what's wrong with the town. Probably one of the reasons the town didn't get what it didn't work out. Because
Yeah.
you got this guy who's sort of running it, kind of bribing everyone. There's this, he's corrupt. He's not a gang leader, except in the loosest definition of a gang.
Yeah.
He's not a mobster. He's just, so I think all those things actually, maybe not as, they're a little subtler, but I think without it, the film would have been less. You could have still made the movie. It's not but I think choosing Christmas makes it a little, I think it emphasizes that. I think if you think about it, like in a week, you kind of go, yeah, no, Christmas, it does work better. If we took it out, it'd be, it loses a flavor that, it's kind of like a bay leaf. Why do you have this bay leaf in the stew? It does actually bring a flavor to it.
Yeah.
It's just we're not seeing it because by the time you pull that bay leaf out, you're not tasting, this is bay leaf, and so we just think it's useless. And I think that's maybe the way we can see the Christmas in this film stew. It's that bay leaf that's not required. But no, it kind of really does inform the flavor of the film stew.
Yeah.
I really do love my cooking analogies.
Yeah, I mean,
speaking of which, though, in part because Jim, I'm going to bring this on the screen briefly. If you don't, if that would be cool with you, bear with me.
I meant that more as a question, sort of a rhetorical question, almost, rather than a criticism. And I sort of recognize when you're thinking about it afterwards that a lot of it it was Christmas all over the place. Not so much in your face, but. I have another point.
It is there.
Yeah.
But again, though, like coming back, if you'll notice, like I really kind of got my whole head into the theme. I made schnitzel for myself last night.
Oh, yeah.
Me and some friends did a digital, kind of a virtual dinner party, and this is what I made for myself. It's the first time I ever made schnitzel, homemade schnitzel. I'm really quite proud of it.
Yeah.
That said, that's probably why I'm really going overboard in the cooking analogies as well. And I should, maybe I did. I took it as criticism, and it's a solid question. It's part of the iconography of the film now. Yeah. Is this a Christmas movie?
Yeah.
I would say yes, it is. Okay. We
and also
get
just one last little point was that Christmas, also known sort of as literally the darkest time of the year. They use light really well throughout the movie, or lighting really well throughout the movie. So,
and you know what? And no Netflix middle key. They let it be dark at night. They let it be high key, very contrasty at times.
I miss day for night. I wish they would do that more.
Okay, we got a number of chats. Richard. Okay, on this theme of Christmas, Jim. So Richard in the chat says, I think Christmas serves as a reason for the whole town to get together for dinner.
Yeah.
And interesting enough, Siggy's birthday at that time as well. We really do need to watch that other movie, Jim. We may need to watch it with the show. Would love to hear if anyone's interested in that. Do we watch the earlier version in a future episode? or not the earlier, the movie that I think actually is kind of a 30-year prequel to this. Okay, or this is a 30-year later sequel to that. Richard continues, easier to draw the connections between the town members. Absolutely, it does have a practical effect.
Yeah.
Also, snow and darkness helpful for setting the scene. You bet. And then Katie's chiming in. She likes the cooking analogy. Thank you very much, Katie. To quote Katie Fowler, I like the cooking analogy. There we go. Katie and I are on the similar wavelength, cooking-wise. All right. What was there anything? Was there anything you'd change about this movie, Jim?
I don't know. I think it. I think it. I mean, sometimes I like things to be a little more established, so going in, like the way that I think it works in this case. But the fact that you don't know that Sam is going to be our protagonist through the whole thing, he almost seems like a random choice. Zeta walks up to him in a bar and says, let's do shots and the slowest person pays or whatever, and that was, I thought, this guy's dead, or something. And not knowing that his star level in Germany. So I had no idea. So and there's ways you can do that with lighting and maybe a little bit of a scene before they meet or something to establish that. Having said that, it worked for me because everything from then on was sort of a surprise. So
the one thing, and this is a dangler, and you don't have to, like, I'm not one of those, oh, that's a plot hole, or oh, they didn't. You don't have to tie up every loose end, especially if they're subtle, especially if you may want to untangle that in a later movie. But in that very first scene, she says, I only sleep with losers like you. And again, going back to that winners and losers thing, another kind of driving question of the film. Mm-hmm. But she says, when I'm being chased by the cops. Now, she's obviously a situation, it's drama. She just wants to go home.
Yeah.
I don't believe, like Siggy has her daughter's number. Yeah, he didn't come back for me.
Yeah.
What's going on? Where's Frank?
but she's very comfortable doing all this, by the way. Like, this is not the first time that she's walked up to a strange man in a bar and,
Yeah, she's familiar with her own ability to get out of a scrape.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, were you, like, now all I can think of is like, were you already on the run from the cops? Like, what drama were you just leaving?
Yeah.
And then entered this drama.
Because,
and you're absolutely right. Like, you see how it brings up a lot of issues about, sexual assault, rape culture, etc. But, the way she's able to handle herself, with Frank. She's no murderer.
Yes.
But, she's definitely someone who's like, well, I can use this gun to threaten you because you're like, you're a piece of shit trying to rape me, and I think but what was she involved in before? That's all of a sudden it's like, well, me and my crap. It's you want to know more about the character.
Yeah.
Who knows? Although it could be like it's going to be 30 years later.
Yeah.
Now she's the mayor of that town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but those are the best characters in anything, is when they hint at other things going on. It makes
bigger life.
It makes for the best songs and the best movies, the best books. I mean, it's that whole notion of
my father fought in the Clone Wars.
Yeah. And that whole notion, that Doctor Who notion of, oh, the TARDIS is bigger on the inside. It's just like there's more here, and that sort of That's always makes things seem richer.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And yeah, it's not like again, it's not a plot hole. It's not a loose end that's like, I can't believe they didn't tie that off. It's
Yeah.
like, it does. It's like, oh, what's going on here? What else? You know?
Yeah.
And it also helps inform, like I said, Siggy is very well, he's aware of his daughter. Just, then of course, but she also, again, like everyone knows how to push back.
Yeah.
She's like, all right, let me tell you the truth. We got high. Then we were horny.
And Sam keeps eating. That's the best part. He's like, "Can you pass the salt?" he's unencumbered by this. He just. I thought that's typically like, "Let's get out of here, honey," but he's hungry, right? He hasn't eaten all day, and he's just.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, it's like, yeah. Also smart enough. Again, not that. Actually, somebody from, won't name names, somebody I grew up with, like in high school especially, but in some ways this individual I'm thinking of very much embodies that kind of that sort of masculinity, that I'm the man here, and I'll like he would, I could imagine this individual I'm thinking of, Jim, chiming in when dad is grilling his daughter, like, hey, that's enough of that. Nope. Sam, being an adult, kind of, no, I'm just going to have some salt. Yeah, this is wonderful. Between you two, I don't need to stick my nose in this because I still really don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Who the fuck's Frank?
And I've known her for 24 hours.
Exactly. Like he's, it's 24 hours. It's very stressful. He's probably very hungry.
Yeah.
Just, you know what? Oh, I could have a drink. And again, Katya, pick up on the play, but doesn't chime in. But the way she's drinking the wine, it's just
yeah.
Damn,
it's that
everyone gets their little moment.
Yeah.
It's like no one is denied their moment.
The old the thing that I've learned probably more recently is that whenever they're setting up for a dinner movie or a dinner scene in a movie or a TV show, nothing good will generally it's to quote Admiral Akbar, it's a trap. And just you'd say, oh, let's have a dinner. Oh, this is all leading towards a dinner. Oh, we're going to have a dinner later tonight. Nope.
Come in to eat.
Yeah, it's basically a wrestling ring and
run
with food.
Run, Ferris, run.
Yeah, exactly. Skip dinner. Go to bed early.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, listen, before, I don't know about you, Jim. I'm thinking we're getting to final thought territory. Sure. I think this is one of those movies where it's like, but boy, this is so good, you can't even complain about it.
Yeah.
But before we do that, why don't let's put the focus on you, my friend.
Sure.
And why don't you tell us about what we're watching next week?
Oh, yes. Next week, it's a kind of a crazy 3-country co-production. Again, with a Christmas theme. It's called Joyeux Noël. There we go. And it's revolves around the great soccer truce, or the great Christmas Eve truce back in World War One. It's quite. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one, Jim, and I think it'll be a great final big Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Before we before we move to post Christmas. Other program,
other stuff, yes,
yeah, and although yes, set in World War One, not a genre violence thing, but like a bright spot, a tragic bright spot, but a bright spot nonetheless. Okay, Ahmed, Jelly Duck 100. I'm heading out. Happy holidays, everyone. You too, Ahmed. Thank you so much for coming by. We're just getting into final thoughts anyway. You won't you'll be missing something, so you'll have to come back later to watch it. But you have a great rest of your day, Ahmed, and thanks for dropping by. Or a great rest of your evening, because we're actually shooting this at a reasonable time for our wider range of fans. Okay, Jim. Yes. Hey, one more before we do one more time. Let's folks, if we could get that like. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell.
It's not quite the same tenor, but
still, they're jingle bells, though.
yes.
You know, like I think that's totally appropriate. Okay, yeah, Jim. What's your final takes on this film?
Yeah, great. It's definitely worth your time. It's the price is right if you're already subscribing to Netflix, and it's totally worth a shot. It's not a saving Christmas movie. It's yeah, I quite enjoyed it. Good. It's a good watch, and you know, being new, a new movie set at Christmas, that's always a sort of an extra bonus.
Yeah.
And how about you?
I agree, Jim. Like very well worth people's time. Had some fun. You know, it does. Like, I mean, it is. You know, when you're talking about these themes, it gets a little serious, gets a little downbeat at times, but it does have way more hope at the end, and maybe not true love, but adult love wins. The protagonists are worthy of their victory. Yeah, it's got and there is a little bit of, you know, you'd mentioned when talking sometimes about nostalgia, bittersweet. Yes, there is a bit of bitter in this sweetness, but I think it has it's kind of a sweet movie in some ways. I do want to ask anyone in the chat, or if you see this later, what are your thoughts on this film? You know, do you think Jim and I are full of it? You know, you think we're missing something? Are we not asking a question? And yes, again, to everyone, yeah, we'll do an interview with Janosch and Mara, and we'll have them back on the show. But we'll definitely get an interview so we can kind of cover some of these bases we might have missed, because it is German, you know. Although part of me, Jim, did kind of, and I did want to ask you about this. Maybe it could be the last question before we queue up. Was there anything, like at the beginning, I had a little bit of a moment of kind of going, given it's a Netflix co-production, are we actually seeing more of an Americanized film? I personally don't believe. By the time we got to the end, it's like, no, this is not a North American film. This has not been made North American friendly. But did you ever at that moment or before, it's like, oh, are we just seeing Netflix versions? You know, a weird kind of, well, Netflix is paying for it and they go, no, it's got to play in North America and that won't play.
Yeah, I mean, not an expert on these things. And for what we've been discussing for the past little bit, I don't think so, because it shows a sort of a you know, it could be any small town, dying small town in the world, of which there are many. But I think it feels like a movie from a different place, and there's no. You know, they don't turn Sam into a typical hero, and the women I don't think are typical either. The bad guys are not. You know, it's not that you don't get a lot of that typicality, if that's a word, from a lot of these characters. And the setting, it's very much a place movie. Like, it's very much set it's really about where they are as well, which I always like.
You're absolutely right.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
Richard agrees with us on only the title was North Americanized. Like a sticker slapped on the DVD box.
Yeah,
Great
yeah.
comment. Yeah,
Yes,
you're absolutely,
yeah, that's nails it.
yeah, Richard is saying, good movie. We, like him and Katie, really liked it. Very glad you guys did.
Yeah,
Yeah, again, I'm starting to get a little worried. But yeah, you know what? I think that's one of the great things about what we've been doing the last several months now. Actually, coming up, we've passed our 8-month anniversary.
yes,
Like that's a thing. We're gonna be hitting the 40 movie mark soon.
yeah,
But yeah, you know what? You get some lemons and then you find some gems.
yeah.
I think
oh, yeah.
this is a gem. Definitely worth your time to
Oh, yes.
watch. Especially for a genre film, to talk about, like deeper stuff where it doesn't feel like it's preachy either.
Yeah,
It definitely is a show, don't tell thing.
Mm.
He does his one rant about your masculinity, and I don't think he refers to it ever again, Sam. Like, it's just forever, you know what, some chest beating from some of these doofuses, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely.
All right, well, Jim, I'm gonna if you can hang out, if you
Sure.
hang out in the green room while I cue everyone, I remind everyone. Next week, again, we're going back to the evening. So next week, again, the movie is Joyeux Noel. Now here in Canada, Jim and I were able to find it on either Canopy or I think it was Hoopla, a library service. But otherwise, I believe you can find it on, most of your standard streamers, either for rent, purchase, maybe as part of a subscription. But I know in Canada here, you can get it on Hoopla or Canopy, one of those two. And so when we're when we're gonna do our deep dive on that, that'll be next week, next Sunday. That'll be the 20th, 4 or 5 days before Christmas, the 20th, Sunday, December 20th at 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, Universal Coordinated Time -6. The -6 is the UTC offset. Okay, so with that in mind, everyone, I'm gonna let's take this music down and let's cue the outro.
I've been in your